Can I jump in?
Please.
All right, so I will be talking about enhancing neurostimulation through the use of context, another variable that potentially can affect results when it comes to effectiveness of neurostimulation. I'm a Duke, an assistant professor. I direct the Brain Stimulation Research Center here. Nice to meet everybody. Next slide, please. Nothing to declare. Next slide, please. It takes a village to do this. Next slide, please. All right, so we know that efficacy of neurostimulation, and I study particularly TMS, but this applies to other types of neurostimulation, depends on the state that the brain it is. Next. So for example, when we do adaptation paradigms, we see that neurons that have gone through those adaptation paradigms tend to be more susceptible to neurostimulation. Next. And when we do a priming paradigm, we know that neurons exposed to this paradigm tend to be less susceptible or more resistant to neurostimulation. So I think about it as if you tire the neurons out, then they're welcoming the neurostimulation help. But if you actually get them on the jump start and ready to go for a task, then they're less likely to accept your input, your electrical input that you're bringing from the outside. Next. From a very different world, we know that behavioral interventions change the brain, and they're very straightforward ways to manipulate context. And here's just a review that highlights what specific brain regions are affected in different disorders, as well as what changes we can see through different types of behavioral interventions. Next. And the reason I presented that is because there is an opportunity for synergy, for using behavioral interventions to adjust the context that we administer neurostimulation in order to promote our effects. There's a bunch of different ways we can combine approaches. One would be to overlap behavioral therapies with neurostimulation. We've done this for depression with cell systems therapy and RTMS in a pilot trial. It showed to be feasible, acceptable, and we had some preliminary evidence of success. Next. And others have done it too, where they combine neurostimulation with psychotherapy and they show effects above and beyond psychotherapy alone. Next. Another way to combine approaches would be to prime unwanted behavior before neurostimulation. For example, we do this in the case of OCD treatments. We could also do this for eating disorder, substance use. Next. We can also run an adaptation paradigm on wanted behavior right before neurostimulation and then administer neurostimulation. I haven't seen this done yet. Next. We can engage in wanted behavior during neurostimulation and offer stimulation that enhances the process. So we want to personalize the approach that we take to enhance that wanted behavior. Next. Or we can have people engage in unwanted behavior during neurostimulation and then personalize our neurostim to inhibit that process. Next. So here's some ways I've tried to integrate these different approaches that combine behavioral interventions and neurostimulation. Next, we've developed a new intervention where we train cognitive restructuring, just like we would do in a psychotherapy session. And I think of this as an adaptation paradigm. And then we administer RTMS enhanced cognitive restructuring. Next. And what I mean by that, RTMS enhanced cognitive restructuring, is that we prime distress before RTMS, and then we coach people to use regulation while at the same time receiving neurostimulation that's excitatory over the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which we think would enhance that emotion regulation process. Next. So what we found is that when we combine these two approaches versus comparing it with sham alone, we can actually cut the amount of time it takes to downregulate distress almost in half. Next. If we personalize this even more by using personalized neurostimulation with the use of imaging, go next, that effect gets even larger. So we see a 60% increase in how much faster regulation happens in the active condition. Next. So that highlights that it's really helpful, that combination is helpful, but do we actually need a behavioral skill to see these effects? So in a different study, what we did is we exposed people to aversive sounds, and then we either had them listen to those aversive sounds while we administer excitatory neurostimulation or inhibitory neurostimulation based on connectivity. And either with regulation or without regulation. So in one condition, we told them just listen. In another condition, we told them downregulate. Next. So what we found is that, again, just like before, when compared to sham, the addition of neurostimulation was helpful. So engaging the circuit with neurostimulation did improve participants' distress. Next. But when we added the skill, the behavioral intervention at the same time as the neurostimulation, we actually found effects that were even larger. So changing the context during neurostimulation led to much bigger changes in the distress reported at the end of the paradigm. Next. So in conclusion, don't forget about context when developing neurostimulation interventions, because it could actually make a big difference. Thank you.